Social media is driving us all crazy. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I am pleased to talk to you today about a documentary that I think we all need to see, The Social Dilemma. I am fortunate enough to have the director, Jeff Orlowski, here on the podcast today. The film is on Netflix, which is awesome because I think we all have Netflix. Jeff, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
First of all, brilliant documentary, by the way.
Thank you.
You really have gotten to the heart of all of the problems with social media, the fact that these platforms are made to be gamified using the same techniques that get people addicted to gambling. I want to know from a personal standpoint from you, when did you realize this was an issue and that there was a problem that you needed to explore in this documentary?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for that. In 2017, after the last election, after I was super heavily addicted to social media during that whole time, there is a friend of mine named Tristan Harris, who I went to college with, who started talking about social media. And he's somebody who worked at Google. So he was inside at Google and he was talking about how Google was designing things internally and how these techniques were manipulating the public, basically. And so I started talking with Tristan and really started to understand and learn what exactly is going on, how these systems are designed, and the impacts that those have on society. And so really, this started in 2017 at a time when nobody was criticizing. I can't say nobody. I mean, there certainly were academics and others who have been talking about this for a bit, but I started hearing it from tech insiders themselves. And that was super fascinating for me to hear from people who worked at Google, at Facebook, at Twitter, and say, look, there's a problem with this thing that we're building. And here's the way that they see it. That was a huge transformation in my thinking and understanding. And that set us down the path to make this film.
So I'm curious because you're someone who has worked in tech.
Mm-hmm.
You're also a filmmaker yourself. So having worked in tech, you have a unique insight into this. How do you use, now that you've done this documentary, how do you use social media differently?
Oh, that's a great question. In the making of this film, I basically went from such a heavy user to not using social media at all, pretty much. There are one or two things that I've posted just to promote a very specific cause. But I've basically stopped touching these things. There's a thing called the Facebook newsfeed eradicator that I installed as a plugin as well. So if I even open Facebook on my computer right now, I don't see a feed at all. There's nothing there, but I can still send a message to a friend. One of the big things that I think about is, when are these tools that are designed for you versus when are they designed for arguably some other purpose? And one of the easiest ways to think about that is, what are you paying for or not? There's a phrase that we use in the film: if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. And that is the case for social media. That's the case for Google. That's the case for YouTube. And these platforms are platforms that are monetizing through other means. And really diving into that, understanding that, and unpackaging that has been a huge transformation for me in this process. And it just makes me think about different software in different ways.
What do people in Silicon Valley think about the effects that they've seen? We've seen, you can't ignore that there has been good that has come from social media.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if the bad has outweighed the good. I mean, when you look at how polarized everything is, and
right.
I do need to ask you too. The movie premiered at Sundance, the recent Sundance, which was feels like 7 years ago, but it was actually.
Oh my goodness, it feels like forever ago. So that was in January, right? And it is a completely different world now, and I'm so thrilled that the film is coming out. There were so many times where I'm like, is this the right time to release the movie or not? I don't know, and it just feels like it's building more and more and more, and the timing feels great for me. I think there are mixed opinions in Silicon Valley. I think that there are people who still believe the way I think of it, like that they've drank the Kool-Aid and they've had the Kool-Aid around all the positive stuff. I certainly fully acknowledge there are great things that have come from social media, great movements that have been born. But I try to compare that to the fossil fuel industry. And we can look at great things that came out of the fossil fuel industry. You know, a long time ago, somebody dug up a bunch of oil and found how transformative this was as a resource. And we're seeing now, only years later, the consequences of burning a lot of fossil fuels. Comparably with social media, I think when this stuff first came about, we only saw the positives. We only saw the good and the opportunities that came from it. And we didn't think about what those full downstream consequences would be. And now we're realizing that we, the public, we are the oil that's being drilled and extracted out of the system and being sold to others. And we are a resource in this equation. And whether that is having impacts on teen mental health and suicide rates that have been going up, whether that's having impacts on the individual level or on the societal level with increased polarization, conspiracy theories running rampant, election manipulation. There's a line that's in our film from somebody who was an early investor in Facebook. And he says that Russia didn't hack Facebook in the 2016 election. They just used it. And that this is one of the big shifts that I think we're starting to see and recognize as we're seeing that same pattern being repeated this year with this upcoming election.
Well, it's as someone who's bought ads on Facebook, you can get away with quite a bit. I mean, it's just the micro targeting of audiences is incredible. What I was curious about is how much the film changed, because it feels like you finished this movie a week ago.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. But we were just that far ahead of the curve, man. I don't know.
Because I'm shocked. Like, it had to have changed because there's so much information in there about COVID-19 and how that's been politicized. Can you talk about that? And you must have. I know that people premiere movies at festivals and then will continue to tweak it. How much did you tweak it?
We made changes. So we premiered at Sundance in January, and then we made changes in March and April. And the virus was just picking up, but we still knew that we needed to include it and reflect it. So we made some changes in that period of time that we were able to work in. So we locked the film in early May, I believe, late April, early May. But we kept thinking about what's the argument that will last the test of time. Like, if this thesis is correct, if what we believe is true with this argument, then what trajectory does that take us on? And first of all, that's a scary trajectory, which was the reason why we made the film in the first place. But it allowed us to make some guesses around what's the state of the world going to be like in the future when this film lands. And so we were really trying to avoid day-to-day news cycles and short-term stories. And we were really trying to keep it to what's the fundamental backbone that's driving the system that's going to sustain itself until we change the system.
It's what I also love about the film I want to talk about is that you created this fictional family, where you show sort of case scenarios of ways that families use social media and how it has impacted just us having dinner together. I almost feel like the 21st century place setting includes a knife, a fork, a spoon, and a phone. I literally see families or people. Not
just a phone, like a phone holder that props it up. I probably have one on my desk here. Like, it's something that's going to give you that perfect angle for you to see your phone with.
It's bizarre. So what I do love about that fictionalized scenario is it lays out really clearly all the different situations that a family can encounter strife just from using not only the mobile device but the addiction to it. What led to the decision? So you've got this, amazing interviews, but that sort of narrative that runs throughout the film.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks. We always knew, like, the creative bar for this film. We could always have done a talking head documentary and just have all of the experts speak. And I love films like that. But we felt like there was more we could do. And as we were talking to our subjects and the engineers and the designers that built the stuff, I started to have a different sort of relationship with my phone. I was thinking about it in a different way. Every time I picked it up, every time I got a notification, I started to feel like I was being manipulated. Like, why did an algorithm send me this message right now? Oh, I'm feeling lonely. Why is that why this message came in at this particular point in time? There's an algorithm choosing what to show you, when to show you, how frequently to show you, all of these different things. And so I started to just think of my phone in a different way in that process. And I kept thinking, what's on the other side of the screen? And that was really the driving force behind the whole narrative, that we wanted to bring to life the algorithms that are hiding on the other side of the screen. And the way we could do that was through a family, and to see the relationship of the family to the algorithms. And so as the film unfolds and as we're learning what's going on and how these technologists have designed the software, we see those techniques being enacted on the family. And that was one of the big creative challenges for us, was to interweave those two storylines to get them to flow well and to get them to flow together.
Well, not just that, but you actually illustrated illustrated how someone is manipulated by social media by actually anthropomorphizing, so to speak.
Exactly.
I mean, it's done in a very clever way with the actor
Vinny
from
Karheiser.
Yeah,
one of the actors from Mad Men.
Oh, he's
like
great.
An advertising guy all the way through. Yeah,
he's really good. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, because I think it lays out simply for people that don't understand technology, don't know how that works. This is how you are being manipulated.
Exactly.
You know, it's almost like one of those quaint science films they might have shown in elementary school. That's kind of the way I thought it was very well done.
Cool.
So,
awesome. Thank you.
So I'm curious the reaction of people who've seen it. I know for myself, I've read twice Jaron Lanier's book, the 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts right away, and I still haven't deleted, but I have dramatically cut down. I'm like one of my friends who's a former smoker who then goes to a bar and bums one cigarette.
Right. That's funny.
So I still use it because I have to, for, you know, to promote, especially indie film. You know, we're always kind of behind the 8 ball on everything. Like, to promote and support indie film, you've got to be on social media. It's your cheap form of marketing, but really don't use it for much else. If anything, I know that an experience on social media can also have a very negative effect on my day, just in terms of
how you feel.
How have you felt, like, post the film, and then also audiences? Because I imagine the Q&A, I really wish I was at Sundance. That Q&A at Sundance and that public screening must have been an amazing.
It was awesome. It was a great response. I think you're bringing up a bunch of different themes and questions that are really like, you're hitting the nail on the head. I think there's a balance between what one as an individual feels on these platforms and the response that is oftentimes a negative emotional engagement that we have with them. So there's the individual impacts and effects of these platforms, and then there's the societal ones as well. And what you were talking about, like, oh, we need to be on social media. I just feel like so many people, like, they think that we have to be on these platforms because other people are on these platforms. And it's because so many people are on these platforms, which is why we have to be on these platforms too. And it's just like a massive FOMO, or like a FOMO machine in many ways. Even how it was grown as an exclusive thing at the start, and then invites and more people came on board, it became the cool thing to be on it. But having basically removed myself from it for the last 2 years, I don't miss really anything from those platforms. I'm still connecting with my friends, my actual friends, not the thousands of friends that I have on the platform, but the people that I consider close in my life. I'm connecting with them in almost a stronger way than ever before. And in terms of news, I go to news outlets and get actual news from news outlets. The majority of Americans now, I believe 55% of Americans, are getting their news from social media. And I just don't trust news and information coming through algorithms like that. Like, that's not a fair representation of reality. And I feel more and more like, if friends are getting their news from social media, I'm going to question your stance even harder than I might have before, because I don't trust what you might be seeing there. So for me personally, leaving the platforms has not been a major impact on me in a personal way, other than giving me back my time, giving me back creativity, giving me back my own energy and my my creative thinking. That was a huge part of making this film, was recognizing I'd be at my computer trying to write a scene or trying to work on something, and I could feel my phone, the presence of the phone, the notification. I learned a lot about mindfulness and distraction. And when you get disrupted from focused work, it takes a really, really long time to get back into that deep level of focus. And so notifications are the worst for creativity. So it was really, personally, I was trying to embody these principles and these practices that we were learning while making the film that completely changed my relationship with technology.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned notifications, because what I always found interesting is when you download any new app, the default setting is all notifications on.
Yeah.
And my policy was I download an app, I turn all notifications off.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to be bothered. It's
right.
And it's just interesting. I remember Arnold Schwarzenegger saying once, a long time ago, when he refused to have a cell phone because he didn't want to be at someone else's beck and call. And I kind of feel now these companies have us at their beck and call.
Yeah.
It's an
I remember years ago. So I used to work in tech. I love technology. When I had the original iPhone, I remember there was a phase at some point when they enabled push notifications. And the push notification, and first the language of it, it's like, I'm literally going to push this onto you. And I remember seeing that option come in and turning it on and feeling so differently in that moment. Like, this is a weird shift, that I am not in control of how I'm using my device, that other things are going to come and put pressure on me. And that's now our default standard, right? Like, you can spend your entire life, like literally the ideal goal for an algorithm, an intention algorithm, is to get you to spend 24/7 on your laptop and on your iPad and on your phone at the same time. How many times have you been watching something on one screen and then engaging with another thing on another screen? It's like mental fracking. They just like got a 2x out of you or 3x out of you, right? They can show you 3 times as many ads if you're on 3 devices at the same time. And so the goal of these platforms is that we basically do just become mindless zombies staring forever at the screen. How do we take back and reclaim our mindfulness, our intention, separating our intentions from our attention and what they're trying to optimize for?
Right. Well, I will say that I don't know that Skynet is coming to destroy us, but I do believe that technology will simultaneously save us and could enslave us. It could enslave us if we don't become aware of this and modify our relationship with social media. Because one thing that I've always observed is I'll be on social media, I'll say, oh my God, look at all this awfulness in the world. And then I'll go outside and talk to people, and people are really nice to each other.
Yes.
That's so
exactly.
I think more of that.
Like, get out in the real world and have real conversations with real humans, and that's what technology could do, right? And I think Tristan and his organization, they're called the Center for Humane Technology, and I think this is really one of the biggest things. It's like, when is technology making us better humans? Photoshop gave us a creative tool and a landscape that we can create something. Like, there are countless tools on computers or on phones that increases human capacity. There's a line in the film talking about a bicycle for the mind. A bicycle was an invention that let humans go farther and faster. And that's what Steve Jobs wanted the computer to be. He wanted it to be a bicycle for the mind, to allow us to do more. And I think that's really the North Star for where we need to reorient our technology. We need to move away from an extractive, attention-based business model, and we need to go back to, when is it serving us? And what are we willing to pay for it? Like, are you willing to put money down for something that's bringing value to your life?
Well, Jeff, the movie is fantastic. The Social Dilemma. It's on Netflix today, and you can see it. Not today. It'll be in the future when this posts. But I want to thank you for being on the Film Threat podcast. I also want to thank our sponsor, Storyblocks. Go to storyblocks.com/filmthreat. Jeff, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. I could talk about this topic forever. All day. It's so pervasive. But
well, we're going to be hosting a lot of conversations over the course of the coming weeks and months. So find us on thesocialdilemma.com and engage with our team, and eager to talk more.
Awesome. Jeff, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Chris. Bye.